War, media, and fandom. How will these three elements intertwine in a growing conflict? This week on Schedule for Launch, join me, Zach Walsh, as I speak with Austin Ramsay about the upcoming mega podcast, CalazCon. Using Austin's system Beam Saber, explore a democratic military operation starring 30 players as they enter a war zone. With twists and turns for the show waiting, we explore the backdrop of the setting and how it'll all go down. It's all happening right now on Schedule for Launch. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I am really excited to be coming at you with a very unique and super cool project by a creator who is, well, Austin, you're really trying to organize something huge here, and I'm very excited to hear about it. So, Austin, thank you so much for joining me on the show this week.
Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
Like I said, I was looking at the stuff, and I realized that you and I don't live too far from each other, and that got me. I was like, oh yes, another Canadian. It's been a while since I've had somebody else from here on the show, so it's going to be a fun time. So Austin, we're here to talk about a very interesting, unique, kind of very different project than anything else I've really talked about. The closest thing would be I once featured a podcast that a friend was launching that had a lot of people involved in it. And this is probably the closest thing to that I've seen in a long time. We're going to be talking about CalazCon? Am I saying that right? I just want to double check.
I say CalazCon. So
CalazCon, okay.
Yeah, close enough.
So we're going to be talking about CalazCon, and I'm pumped because it's featuring one of what I think is the best Forged in the Dark games, and that's Beam Saber. Phenomenal game, by the way. Great choice.
Thank you very much.
Before we hop into it, though, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
So hi, everyone. My name is Austin Ramsay. My pronouns are he and him. I am a tabletop role-playing game designer, podcaster, and streamer. For tabletop role-playing games, I'm best known for the aforementioned Beam Saber.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've been talking like you didn't write Beam Saber. Like, I should have probably started off with that. I'm embarrassed. I just realized how I've been talking about this. I'm so sorry. I'm nervous. This is one of my favorite games.
Glad to hear it. I've made some other games too, at least one other Forged in the Dark game and some other smaller games. All of those you can find at austin-ramsay.itch.io. I also streamed 2 actual play shows, the Cenotaph, which was a Beam Saber actual play, and The Last City, which was a Fantasy Craft actual play.
Yeah.
I was also the primary GM for the now concluded actual play podcast You Don't Meet in an Inn, which was about exploring obscure tabletop role-playing games with a rotating cast. We ran from 2014 to 2022.
Wow.
And played a wide variety of games in that time. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I guess, my internet presence.
I wouldn't say that being the creator of Beam Saber is a small one. You guys are pretty popular, at least with some of my my personal favorite podcasts. I know that they've used it before. I'm pretty sure that you won a People's Choice Award from Dicebreaker too, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
That. Yeah,
that was the 2022 award. It was pretty recent. I put in a lot of hard work to make Beam Saber what it is, both personally and in getting people to work with me on the project. And I've also been very fortunate to work with those people and people who helped me indirectly, that helped promote the game through playing it or just talking about it. So I'm very happy with how it's come out. Physical version hasn't shipped yet. Should be. I've got a contract with the printers now. There were unfortunately many delays between the Kickstarter and now. I launched the Kickstarter for Beam Saber in March 2020. It's
Was it really that long ago?
yeah, there's something really big happened
Yeah, I wonder.
between then and now that delayed everything in a multitude of ways. So that's unfortunately delayed the game a fair bit, but at the same time, that's allowed me to tweak it little bits here and there, and I'm very happy with how it's come out in the end.
It's really good. I know you've heard that before. Beam Saber is very, very good. And I have been trying to get friends to play it for a very long time. And hopefully this episode will help convince them.
Well, I guess for any of your listeners who might be in the Greater Toronto area, I'm going to be at Breakout Con running Beam Saber in March.
Oh, rad.
Yeah, so people are welcome to swing by and hop into sign up for one of the sessions. I'm also going to be running BattleTech, but that's not a role playing game. That's a tabletop war game.
It's still fun though.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about CalazCon, and I think that this is a super cool, really big project. Like I said, I'm fascinated by it because you're going for a huge scope. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what CalazCon is and kind of how you're looking to pull this off?
Yeah. So CalazCon is going to be a mega game actual play series. And what that means is that there are going to be 31 on-screen participants across 6 groups. There's going to be 5 traditional Beam Saber squads that are going to be 4 pilots and 1 GM each. And then each squad is going to be represented by a legislator, and each of the legislators will get together after one cycle of play. A cycle of play being a mission followed by a downtime for each squad. And the legislators, they will vote on what the next direction of the story will be. And they'll do that voting in character because every single squad is going to be a member of the Democratic Federated Systems.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So a military democracy is what it's going to be, and we're going to see how each squad impacts each other since they're all going to be playing in the same shared world location, focused around a single city. And then even if they don't, end up messing directly with each other's squads, because Beam Saber doesn't have PvP rules. Forged in the Dark isn't designed for PvP.
No.
But there will be NPCs as part of each of the other squads. That was something I'd considered. So it will be possible for them to directly interact, but they're also definitely going to affect each other indirectly.
Yeah.
Even if that's just because, an NPC from one squad's mission will pop up in another squad's mission, potentially.
I love the idea of this legislator, and I love the interactivity between them. But before we kind of hop into it, because I'm realizing now not everybody might know what Beam Saber is. So do you want to give just like a little rundown on what Beam Saber is real quick before we kind of go on with CalazCon and telling people about how this is going to run?
Yeah, so Beam Saber is a Forged in the Dark game about pilots of powerful machines in a war that consumes every aspect of life. They're just trying to do their part and get out mentally and physically intact, and hopefully they can bring others with them. So as I said, it's a Forged in the Dark game, which gives it a very particular structure of a mission, which has a particular style of play, very familiar to most traditional tabletop role-playing games, very action-oriented, lots of mech action and on-foot sci-fi action.
Yeah.
And then once a mission is completed, that's followed by a downtime phase, where the players get into interpersonal drama as they do the things they need to do to prepare for their next mission, whether that's repairing their vehicles, healing, reducing their stress, or working on projects, getting to know each other better. There's a variety of things, and all of it creates interesting relationships between the characters.
Mm-hmm. It is one of those games that I think when you're using this many people, it really works because you have the faction system in the Forged in the Dark games, and Beam Saber uses factions in a very, very good way. I really like the squad system in it. I think that with a game this big, Beam Saber and Forged in the Dark games in general is really the only system out there that's theoretically designed to be able to handle something like this.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I haven't. I mean, part of the reason that the main reason that I'm using Beam Saber for this project is because I do know it so well, and also it's building off of the back of a system. So Beam Saber has many supplements for it out at this point.
Yeah.
I've written 3 myself, and then I also released a license so that anyone who wants to make their own Beam Saber supplement can do so, and keep all of the profits. You don't need to send me in any information about it. The only requirement really is that you credit Beam Saber, myself, and you don't make it so that your supplement stands on its own. You need to have the core rulebook to use your licensed supplements. But that has inspired a lot of people to make a whole bunch of supplements in all kinds of directions. But one of the supplements that I wrote, I would say the main supplement, the Growing Conflict, that adds one of the things that it adds is a faction management subset of rules, which you can add into your campaign if your players want to get into the nitty gritty of being in control of a massive government, as well as playing as their characters that go on missions and so forth. And so CalazCon is building off of the rules for managing a democratic faction that are found in the Growing Conflict. There are rules for managing other factions as well, like a corporatocracy or a theocracy. But those are not what we're using because they're all very different, and I wanted to make sure that every single group had some kind of say in the management of their government in this actual play, and thus the democracy.
So during CalazCon, there's going to be the legislator role, and that's how a lot of that democracy is going to be happening. I'm guessing that's going to be happening in the parliamentary episodes. So let's talk a little bit about that role and how that's going to work for the squads.
Yeah, so each squad is going to have a legislator that is attached to them. The legislator isn't going to be going on missions at all. In fact, there's not going to be any on-screen interactions between the pilots and the legislator that represents them. One of the themes of the show is going to be the limits of representative democracy. And so there's that restriction on in-character communication. Behind the scenes, the players will be talking with each other about their goals for the squad and so forth. So they'll have a legislator, and after each cycle of play, all the legislators will get together, and they are going to give speeches, make deals, and then eventually vote on the direction of the story going forward in the form of assigning missions to the squads. Those missions can be assigned on any basis, whether they choose to assign it for the legislator to try and fulfill the goals of the squad that they are representing, to fulfill the goals of the faction at large, to fulfill their own personal goals, or perhaps they trade votes for resources for their squad and vote along someone else's desires.
Okay.
And the votes are all going to be a bit uneven because, like several other Forged in the Dark games, squads in Beam Saber have tiers, which represents how large and how powerful each squad is. Both NPC squads and player-controlled squads have tiers. And for the legislature, the number of votes a legislator gets is equal to their squad's tier. So we have one tier 1 squad, one tier 3 squad, and 3 tier 2 squads. So we will see how all of those votes shake out. If some of the squads are going to rally together to cast votes along a certain direction as a voting block, or if the tier 3 squad is going to be able to throw its weight around. I'm very curious about how all of that is going to interact with each other.
I'm super interested in that as well. CalazCon it's a lot of people. There's a lot of players. There's a lot of moving parts. About how many people are attached to this project, Austin?
There are 32 people attached to the project at this time.
Wow.
31 of them are going to be on-screen participants, myself included. And then the one person who's not going to be on screen is going to be one of our 3 audio-video editors.
Okay.
I'm going to be one of those as well. So yeah, it's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot of moving parts. Like I think that's what drew this to me.
Actually, I said 32 people, but that's not entirely true because I didn't count the 2 artists who aren't going to be on screen that are going to be creating art for the game as well.
Just as important.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so many people. And this is the one that kind of blew my mind. A couple minutes ago, right before we started to hit recording, I asked you what's something you really wanted to make sure that we talked about. And that was the fact that there are so many playbooks at play for this. And I think that's super interesting. So can you tell me about playbooks for CalazCon and how they're being used, and if there was like a way of assigning them or people selecting which playbook they're going to be for this when it happens?
So the way that I managed that was when I put out the request for applicants, I had people email me with their desired roles, if they want to be a pilot, a GM, or one of the legislators. And if there was a yes, a no, or a maybe for each of those roles. And then for anyone who, sent that initial email and then sent them a follow-up questionnaire asking them a bunch of questions. And 2 of those key questions were, what are your 5 most preferred pilot playbooks? And what are your 5 most preferred squad playbooks? And we're only using the pilot and squad playbooks found in the core rule book and in the Growing Conflict, because there are so many third-party playbooks that I couldn't control for the contents of each of them, and still manage to get a consistent tone for the show. So between the main rulebook and Growing Conflict, there are 20 pilot playbooks, and I want to say 14, I think, squad playbooks. So yeah, I asked everyone for what their top 5 preferences are in each category, and then I color-coded them, and then I sat down with a spreadsheet, and I figured out, first I figured out which players I was going to use, considering things like mic quality, because I got everyone to send in a voice sample, and then time zones. I got kind of lucky because it wound up being that there was effectively one group's worth of people in the UK, one group's worth of people on the eastern seaboard, one group's worth of people down like the middle of North America, and then two groups worth of people on the west coast. So
that's convenient.
Yeah, it worked out very tidily for me. And so I grouped those together primarily on time zone, and then I followed that up by grouping them based on their squad playbook desires, trying to give everyone the squad playbooks that they're most interested in using.
Yeah.
And then once those were all lined up, then it was to dig into all of the pilot playbooks that everyone had said. And everyone managed to get a pilot playbook that they were interested in within their top 5. So it worked out well. It just took a lot of effort to make sure that there was no overlap and that everyone was happy.
How'd you go about organizing that? Because I know you said a spreadsheet, but that's huge, man. That's so much. Like
Yeah, well, I had a spreadsheet set up with the names of each player in a column, and then their desires from like number 1 choice to number 5 choice, each in their own columns. And each playbook had the same color. So like the soldier playbook, every single instance of request for the soldier was the same color of blue, right? Mm-hmm. And then once I had decided that someone was going to get one of those playbooks, I would pull it to the far left past the number 1 position to show that it was like pulled out of their selections, and then I would gray out the rest of their selections and then gray out all the other color matching choices, so that I could instantly see which of like anyone who picked soldier that didn't get picked for soldier. I could instantly see which of their options were grayed out, for instance, and which were still remaining. And I tried to give everyone their number 1 option, and most people did get their number 1 option. There are 20 pilot playbooks.
Yeah.
There's 20 players, and so there was not too much overlap in people's desires. There definitely was some, which was why it took a while to figure it all out, but it worked out well in the end.
Yeah. I think that's one of Beam Saber's strengths, really. You give people a lot of options that don't feel like they're stepping on the toes of other people and other playbooks, which is really impressive considering how easy it is to make certain things overlap. And like there are similar classes in that they would sort of in real life fill a similar niche, but gameplay wise, I think it's so impressive. So just the fact that there are so many options for Beam Saber, and CalazCon is giving people a lot of options to see a bunch of different playbooks in action. I think it's going to be a really cool show with a lot of really unique and interesting characters.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how several of these playbooks end up interacting, because Beam Saber has some expected, traditional playbooks. Most of the ones in the core rulebook are at somewhat par. Well, I don't want to say par for the course, but expected.
You got your soldier,
expected of the genre, right? But the weirdest two probably being the empath and the bureaucrat.
Love the empath so much. It's so good.
And then the Growing Conflict has a lot weirder playbooks, like the Hive, which is a pilot who has 6 bodies because they play a hive mind. Or the Forewarned. That was a mechanical experiment on my part to see if I could effectively combine the token economy of a belonging outside belonging game into a Forged in the Dark game.
Huh. I haven't looked at it, so that sounds super unique and different. and I'm kind of into it.
Yeah, it was a fun design challenge to try and figure out how I might do that. And the way it wound up working is narratively making it so that the pilot has a future sight ability, because one of the things with the token economy belonging outside belonging is that when you're able to make power moves and have guaranteed success because you have tokens that you can then spend on your strong moves, but you also know that to get those tokens you need to voluntarily fail or be vulnerable and make weak moves to gain tokens, to be reductionist about what belonging outside belonging is. And so the forewarned at the start of a session, or at the start of a mission, they make a roll and generate a prediction pool. And so every single time they make a roll, at least one of the dice from their prediction pool must be included in place of one of their dice in the roll.
Oh, no.
And so they can guarantee that a roll is going to have a 1 or is going to have a 6, but they don't know what the rest of the dice are going to come up as.
So cool.
So yeah, those are probably the two weirdest playbooks, but there are also some other weird ones that come out of the growing conflict, and of course they got sprinkled throughout the various squads.
Yeah, we've been talking a little bit about mechanical effects and playbooks, but something I'm really interested in CalazCon is the lore, because we know it's a militaristic democracy, and we know it's takes place in the future. But I want to know a little bit about what the story is about CalazCon and everything else that's going on with that. I've seen some images you've sent me. Could you tell us a little bit about the lore that's going on here and how these squads are going to be affected by it?
So in broad strokes, the series is going to take place on a planet under the control of the Jovangelian Empire that has been invaded by the democratic federated systems with the purpose of liberating the planet from the Empire.
Okay.
And the citizens of the Empire have resisted the liberation at every turn. And so, as so often happens, the war that was supposed to be over by Christmas, metaphorically, has taken 3 years. And it's coming to a conclusion because it's just a matter of time before the democracy wins out, in spite of the insurgency. And one of the key strongholds of the insurgency is one particular city called Hestiol. And as the two exhausted forces gather their might in and around Hestiol, preparing for that final battle, then a third belligerent enters the conflict. And that third belligerent is the nomadic convention CalazCon. And so CalazCon is a traveling convention focused on the fictional media franchise of Calazar. And it crashes into the city and occupies it. And because it's full of fresh, non-war-weary fanatics, it throws everything into chaos and occupies the city. And so the DFS military that has invaded the planet is put onto its back foot because all of its available troops are here, but they're not prepared for this fresh foe. And the military forces local to the planet and local to the city that have gathered there have been greatly disrupted and scattered and put under the boot of this convention. And so the convention takes over the city, filling it with, all the kinds of things you'd expect to see at a convention. You've got cosplay contests, you've got vendors, you've got artists, you've got people looking for swag, you've got panels, you've got previews. just occupying the city and turning it into one big, promotional event for this long-running media franchise. So thematically, the setting is an examination of a couple things: the absurdity and wonder of fandom, but also the terrors of obsession, occupation, and injecting foreign culture into a community. It's inspired by like the Green Zone in Baghdad during the Iraq War, where the U.S. military's private contractors inserted American fast food chains into the heart of the city for the comfort of the Americans.
Yeah.
Another touch point is the 501st Legion, which is a volunteer organization of Star Wars Stormtrooper cosplayers who do charity work while simultaneously representing a fictional fascist empire. So it's about those sorts of like weird. There's too many things to encompass the weirdness that comes out of fans of fictional media, right?
Yeah, it's like the during the I think it was Afghanistan. There's the Tim Hortons military unit that just travels around and delivers Tim Hortons coffee to Canadian soldiers.
Yeah, that sort of corporate grasping at anything for PR publicity or for PR reasons, and also how fans will grab onto and make their identities out of corporate-owned media properties. This is inspired a lot by my interactions with the Gundam fandom. And
yeah, I get that.
and Gundam as a franchise, like more broadly. But as I said, one of the touch points is the 501st Legion, because Star Wars fans can be like that too. And I say all this not as like an attack on people who are fans of those franchises. Like I said, I've had these interactions with the Gundam fandom because I am in the Gundam fandom.
Yep.
It's just about, knowing when to walk away and pick your battles. And I often have to find myself telling myself to that I don't need to give my opinion when I see someone who has disastrously misinterpreted something that happened in a Gundam series I am well familiar with. Just completely missing the point beyond that cool robot meme. Even beyond that.
No, I can agree to that. I never really thought about the 501st Legion like that. But it is a little strange seeing like Stormtrooper helping like sick kids. It's a little weird to think about. So
yeah, like it can certainly be fun to cheer for the bad guys. Everyone loves a heel, and want to play the bad guys every so often. But there are sometimes people get weirdly unquestioning about the things that they cheer for.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the, like I said, the absurdity and wonder of fandom is one of the themes of the show that we're trying to explore with this setting. And some players are already integrating how their characters are going to interact with this mega media franchise into their characters. One player is planning that her character is going to make body pillows as a way to raise funds for their squad. Another one is secretly a well-known fan fiction writer for the series.
Gosh.
One of them signed up with the military to come to the convention. So it's gonna be real interesting to see how the characters interact with the convention and also with the people who are under the convention's boot that they are here to liberate originally from they're, like I wouldn't exactly say appointed government, since the Jovangelian Empire is an autocracy, but the government that they call home,
Mm-hmm.
and now to liberate them from these occupiers as well. So there's a lot going on.
It would be like if Disney just planted roots in the middle of a war zone.
Yep.
Like that's what it is, basically, right?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Yes, because you're absolutely right. There is that corporate endorsement of the venture, but also no, because conventions, in many ways, are labors of love of fans, regardless of their size. Something like San Diego Comic-Con is absolutely massive, and I'm sure it has ties to DC and Marvel and Dark Horse and whatnot, but also it's not being run by those groups.
No.
It's being independently run. I'm sure at the scale it's at is being run, it is being run by a corporation dedicated to that purpose, but the people, like a lot of people who work there and who volunteer there, are still going to be fans of these products,
Mm-hmm.
and not be financially compensated for their work by the product's owners.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense to me. I think that's a super cool way to think about it. I think about whenever a con comes to Toronto or Niagara Falls and seeing that kind of run through and how that explodes for a little while and then it's just gone. So I think that's a super cool way to go about it, and it's a really interesting premise for a show. Speaking of this show, though, it's got a lot of people involved. A lot of episodes obviously planned because you want everybody to get some spotlights. And I know that you're going to be streaming and pre-recording a lot of it and then airing it later. How much content do you think is going to come out of CalazCon down the line? How long do you think it'll run?
It's going to run for a long time. It's going to be over 2 years long. I've done the math because each squad is going to have 10 episodes. There are 5 squads.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 50 episodes plus an additional 5 episodes for the legislators.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I said 10 episodes. What I meant was 10 sessions, and each session is going to be split into 2 episodes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So 20 episodes per squad, 10 episodes for the legislators. So yeah, it's a lot of episodes going to be released. It's also going to be kind of strangely front-loaded in a sense, in terms of the recordings, because the show is going to be pre-recorded and then released in a video format and a podcast format.
Okay.
But because we have this very precise number of recording sessions that are going to happen, and the episodes are going to be released weekly, and the recording is happening across multiple groups, those groups can record relatively simultaneously. We're trying to have it set up so that each recording session happens every other week, roughly. Ideally, we want to get through 1 mission and 1 downtime recording session per squad each month. And so that'll create quite the recordings backlog for the editors to work through. And since we're only releasing 1 episode a week, it's going to result in 1 month producing quite a bit of content.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's a lot of content right there, just even in that short amount of time.
Yeah, so if the recording schedule goes as planned, and we get through 1 full cycle of play, let's see, what's the math on that? That's 11 recording sessions, so 22 episodes worth of material produced in a single month. which of course won't be 22 just episodes on its own, but will have to be cleaned up and edited by the 3 editing staff.
Yeah.
Which, because it's sort of a little bit freeing in a way to have this backlog, because we can start editing and not have to release anything for a while until we feel we have a sufficient a backlog of edited episodes.
Yeah.
And even once those start getting released, we don't have to worry about, like running out of material unless something absolutely disastrous happens.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's, I think whenever you're presenting something like this, I know it's happened with Schedule for Launch itself. Somebody gets sick, for instance, and then you miss a week of recording. And then, oh no, you have to release an episode and you haven't recorded it yet. I think that's one of the advantages to how you're doing this. Because so long as everything happens, and you would need the absolute worst to happen for there to be no recorded episodes if you have this many people doing something. I think that's amazing and super cool, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
Me too.
So here's one of the big questions, Austin. CalazCon is really big, and I know that you want to be able to support everybody who's participating in one way or another. So where's it going to be funding, and what is some of the funding going towards?
So we're going to be on Indiegogo for funding CalazCon, and the reason for that is because Indiegogo has the flexible funding format that they allow, which means that even if we don't hit our goal, we still get to keep the funds that backers have chosen to get support us with, unlike other crowdfunding sites where you have to meet the goal. And to that end, I've kind of shot for the moon a bit with the funding goal, because we want to make sure that everyone gets paid. The players, the GMs, the video editors. That's going to happen for sure. It's mostly just a matter of how much everyone's going to get paid. Depends upon how well the crowdfunding does. We're also going to need to pay for podcast hosting services.
We'll talk about that in a second. I have some ideas for you. As somebody who just had a very stressful day dealing with podcasting services, we could talk after. There's going to be some hardware and software that we'll probably need. Hard drive space could potentially be a concern, particularly for the GMs who will be the ones recording the video component of their sessions, which is also going to function as the audio backup just in case anyone loses their individual audio. And I mentioned earlier that we've got artists. I've commissioned a theme song for the show, and as well as art of a map for the setting. And finally, we're getting art done of every single player character and their vehicle. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so cool. That's really cool.
So that's 25 characters. Wait, is that math right? Yes.
Yeah, 25 characters, 25 vehicles.
Actually, not 25 vehicles, because the legislators don't have vehicles.
Right.
And also one of the squads ended up as the Dismounted, which is a squad playbook from the Growing Conflict about characters who don't have mechs or vehicles at all. They are an infantry squad.
That's so cool.
So they
I'm
really
a
little bit of cost savings there. And I actually just today I got the final versions of the Dismounted Squad's character art actually, and so if you check out my Twitter or co-host or Mastodon or Tumblr, you can see art of 4 of the pilots. Well, pilots in quotes, since they're in the dismounted squad.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with how it looks. For the pilot and vehicle art, we've got Ben Fluter, who's the webcomic creator behind Sword Interval and Beekeeper's Tale. He does incredible art. Some of it is already in the Beam Saber core rulebook. He did the faction aesthetic spot illustrations in the book, for example, as well as some other pieces. And his style, I felt, was really good for actual play. It fits both as standalone pieces and also easily transfers into digital tokens for characters as well. So and then Annie Johnston Glick is providing the art for the map. I felt her style was extremely suitable for the type of map I wanted, because I didn't want a one-to-one realistic style scale map for CalazCon. Instead, I wanted to make something that evoked a theme park, where the distances are blurred and each location is more iconographic, with a single image representing what's happening in that particular region, rather than fine details about what's there.
No, I feel like I've seen that art. I think you sent me that one, or I saw it somewhere. Yes, it's the Indiegogo one, right?
Yeah, it is on the Indiegogo page.
It's a lot of fun. It definitely evokes the different amusement parks or attractions. It really, knowing a little bit more about the project now, it really nails the feeling of the con just showing up somewhere.
I absolutely agree. I think it was really fitting. And then the theme song is by Devin Nelson, who's actually one of the players in the show, and they made an absolute banger of an anime OP for CalazCon, and so it's not released yet. When the video promoting the crowdfunding goes live, then the song is also going to go up on Devin's Bandcamp, which is Devin Decibel. So you'll be able to find it there eventually.
I'm super into that. Anytime I hear about a podcast getting its own, as somebody who really likes to make music, it's always so exciting to hear other artists' take on making these things for other people. I'm super into it. I'm really excited to see more about it and see that promotional material.
Yeah, it was my first time commissioning music, and it went really well. I sent Devin a bunch of I think I sent 4 different songs that I wanted to pull inspiration from, with some pretty in-depth notes about what I was particularly inspired from. I don't know how many other people do this, but I sort of listen to music in a way that, to my knowledge, is kind of odd. When I listen to music, it's more about the narrative that comes through the music. I have a hard time actually paying attention to lyrics.
No, I get that.
And so, I see basically any song that I listen to enough becomes an AMV for me.
Yeah. So, little off topic with this, but I've noticed that a lot more with people who are invested in tabletop role-playing games, because I know I do it a lot. I have some friends who are in the space who have mentioned doing something similar or listening to certain music to get into their character. So I get that. I feel like there's some people listening who will also understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the players made a playlist for her character, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out if other players have done that as well.
I love that. I love when people really get into character, and it sounds like you've got a lot of really good people who are working behind these characters and really fleshing them out.
Yeah, there's a lot of dedication from everyone involved, and I'm really proud of all of the hard work everyone has put into this project. There's, because of its nature, it's more than just being a group of friends getting together for sitting around having a session of tabletop role-playing games.
No.
There's a lot more involved. I've sent them at least 2 questionnaires by this point that I've had them fill out. We've got a page of responsibilities and expectations for both players and GMs.
Yeah.
This is one of the notes in the responsibilities is that this is a game, this is a show, this is an experiment. And those 3 points are kind of the sort of guiding principles for the project as a whole. We want to make sure everyone has fun and is safe, but also we are putting on a show, and thus there are certain responsibilities that are attendant to that. And finally, this is also a very experimental project, and so there's going to be some weirdness and some additional effort required to make it work because of that.
It's a twist on the mega game from cons, and I think that's why it's so interesting to me. I know that Beam Saber's been featured on Party of One, and I know very, very well that it was the central system for Partisan from Friends at the Table, which is very commonly talked about on this podcast. So I think you're hitting some very cool, very new waters. And if this goes well, and outside of just like the difficulties that come with recording a big show with a lot of people, I can't see why it wouldn't. I'm so excited for this project to happen, and I'm really hoping that you get as much funding as possible, because I want to see what happens with CalazCon, like a lot.
Thank you. Speaking of funding, if anyone wants to support this project, you can go to Indiegogo and search for CalazCon. That's CalazCon. Or you can go to tinyurl.com/CalazCon. Again, that's CalazCon. You can also follow me on socials. On Twitter, I'm at NotAnIn, NOTANINN. And then I'm Austin Ramsay Games on Tumblr, co-host, and Mastodon.
Well, you got to one of my questions earlier. I was about to say we need to start kind of wrapping up. I'm going to get you to repeat at least some of those links right at the end, if that's at all possible. But I do have one more question that I love to ask on this show. And I think it's good because you're coming at this from a game designer's perspective, but also a showrunner now. And I'm just wondering, what advice can you give to creators wanting to create their own projects, but they don't know where to start? What advice can you give to that new designer?
Start with ideas. Like, I know that sounds kind of obvious, but the way that I create anything, whether it's a tabletop role-playing game or an actual play series or a modification to board game rules, or even this is how I wrote essays when I was in university, is you start off with just a bullet point list. Any ideas you have, you put them down in this bullet point list. And then if there's an idea that is directly related to one of the existing bullet points list, you put it as a sub bullet point list under that. You hit enter, then hit tab, and you make it a subgroup on there. And then you just keep doing that. If your second layer, you have ideas that are directly related to that and somewhat subordinate to it. Then you do layer 3. And then you start asking questions about each of those bullet points. And then you answer those questions in a sublayer. And eventually you end up with this sort of branching document of bullet points laying out a bunch of ideas and questions and answers. And that is a lot of the work done in terms of ideation. Once you get through all those questions and you've answered everything that you think you need to answer, then it's just a matter of making it legible to other people, which admittedly is the hard part.
Yep.
And the less fun part. But, by that point, you've already got so many ideas that it can feel like a waste to not take that next step and show it to somebody.
Yeah. I think that's awesome advice. And I don't think we've ever received that advice in quite that way. We've definitely had people telling them, but it makes sense to ask questions and then answer yourself and then get more questions like that. It's one of those ones that's really obvious when you think about it. But yeah, I don't know if we've had advice quite like that before. So thank you for your words of wisdom, Austin.
You're welcome. I hope some of your listeners find it useful.
I hope they do too. And finally, where are those points where they can find CalazCon again? Because that is why people are here to listen to this episode.
Yeah, so again, if you go to Indiegogo and search CalazCon, CalazCon, or tinyurl.com/CalazCon. You can also, again, find me on socials at NotAnIn, NOTANINN on Twitter, or Austin Ramsay Games on Tumblr, co-host, and Mastodon. You can also find me on itch at austin-ramsay.itch.io. If you want to pick up Beam Saber or any of its supplements or any of my other tabletop role-playing games, and I'm sure I will post about CalazCon there as well.
As always, audience, those links are going to be down in the description below. Go and support Austin and CalazCon and get this show up and running because it sounds really cool. There's so much heart going into this, and there's a lot that can be obtained from this, and I think that it could lead to a different direction on shows if it's successful, and I want to see it get successful. I want to see it grow, and I'm very excited about it. Austin, thank you so much for joining me this week on the show. It's been amazing, and I'm really excited for you. I hope this gets up off the air and gets out there for everybody to see.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
And audience, thank you so much for listening. Austin and CalazCon are going to be launching very soon, so please keep your ears out. I will be posting about it when they go live so you can support them. If they're already live, then hey, go check that top link in the description. You can go and help them out right there. Take care of yourself. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. Hey everybody, thank you for listening to this episode. I'm here with a friend of the show, Lion Knight from Tales from the Table Studios. Lion, if you want to tell them about what's going on in March, we'd love to hear it.
Thanks so much, Zach. Hi, I'm Lion with Tales from the Table Studios, and at the end of March, the 24th through the 26th, we're going to be running a charity drive, the Days of Tales 2, in support of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We're going to be raising money through 36 hours over the course of 3 days with actual plays, panels, giveaways, and some other really cool stuff that we can't talk about just yet, but it's going to be exciting. We're really excited to do it, and we are looking for people who are interested in spreading the word in any way that they can and sharing in this great opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. There's some friends of the show on there as well, so I'm really excited for all that to happen. Until next time, though, everybody, enjoy the outro. Thank you so much to Austin for joining us on the show this week. CalazCon's backing ends on March 10th and has some really cool stuff that you can throw into your shopping cart when you back the project. Flexible funding also means that even if this project doesn't hit the goal, your support will still go to the cast and they can put it towards the show. Check out the top link in the description or go straight to the page by typing in CalazCon on Indiegogo. And thank you for listening, audience. If you like what you heard and you want to show your support, why not leave a review on your podcatcher of choice or tell a friend. Word of mouth is how we grow around here. That's all from me, though. I hope to see you somewhere out there. Bye.